Hi, I'm Doug Van Eaton. Our presentation here got a catchy title, How to Pass the Level 1 CFA Exam. So I assume you're taking a look at this because you're intending to pass the CFA Level 1 exam. I've been helping candidates for about 25 years now, most of those years with Schweser, teaching, writing, helping them develop their products and the study program we've put together for candidates. So I'd like to share a little bit of what I've learned over the years from that, and hopefully it'll help you out. What I've got in mind here is I want to take a look at the CFA curriculum, the structure and the content and topic and exam weights and the exam structure and question format, give you an idea of the task that awaits you. And then I want to talk a little bit about how you can pass with Schweser and the study products that we have put together, materials we have put together, how they fit together, and how you can use them to pass your Level 1 exam. So let's start at the top here, the CFA Level 1 Curriculum. There's 19 study sessions that make up the curriculum, and each of these has one or more readings. And then each reading has these learning outcome statements. And each of these learning outcome statements tell you what you need to know for the CFA exam. There's about 60 readings overall and just over 500 learning outcome statements. I think about currently 525, 530 learning outcome statements. So what are these learning outcome statements? Well, what they do is they focus on the relevant material for the exam. Now, there's a CFA curriculum books. There's a lot of information in there, a lot of practice questions, a lot of everything. But what we want to do is focus on learning these learning outcome statements and gaining those skills and the knowledge that you're going to need for the exam. So these learning outcome statements indicate the knowledge you should get from each reading. So as you're studying, keep those in mind. And they indicate the depth of the topic knowledge required. Now they give command words for each of these. We've got some examples here: describe, explain, contrast, compare, analyze, calculate, estimate, demonstrate, formulate. Well, these are helpful. Sometimes they're not as clear as we would like. Try to think of, well, what's the difference between explain and describe and demonstrate? What's the difference between formulate and calculate? Well, a lot of times it's not exactly clear. But they do give you the general rules of what you need to know for the exam. And the CFA Institute tells us that each exam question is based on one or more of these learning outcome statements. And as far as we know, they've stuck to this very closely over the years. So as an example, here's our first study session at Level 1, Quantitative Methods. Now there's 3 readings in this study session: time value of money, organizing, visualizing, and describing data, and probability concepts. And together with the second study session, Quantitative Methods 2, this makes up the topic area of quantitative methods. And so it's these topic areas that we'll look at when we look at the exam weights. Now to dive a little bit more deeply here, Reading 3, Probability Concepts, we've got the first 3 learning outcome statements as an example here. The first one, define a random variable, an outcome, an event. Well, that one seems pretty short and pretty straightforward. Some of them are longer and not as straightforward. Our second learning outcome statement for probability concepts here is identify the 2 defining properties of probability, including mutually exclusive and exhaustive events, and compare and contrast empirical, subjective, and a priori probabilities. So when you see compare and contrast, you've got to know the differences between these, right? Have in your mind some bright lines to where you look at a description of a probability and how it was arrived at and say, oh, that's empirical, or that's subjective, or that's an a priori probability. And our third example of a learning outcome statement here, describe the probability of an event in terms of odds for and against the event. Well, this seems to be kind of a calculate one, even though it says describe. Because if we've got the probability and we want to say what are the odds, well, we need to know how to calculate that. So here's the exam weights. First topic area, quantitative methods. And they give a range, 8 to 12% of the questions. So that's going to be between 14 and 22 questions on your CFA exam. Economics, our second topic area here, also between 8 and 12%. So those each run about 10% of the exam. The largest here, or close to it, is financial statement or financial statement analysis, the accounting. Now, if you look over here on the study sessions, you'll see, yeah, right there, you'll see that there's 4 study sessions that make up financial statement analysis. And so you can expect between 23 and 31 questions on the exam there. Now, corporate issuers is also about 10%. And that's if you had finance training at the university. Corporate finance is what it's often called. Equities, a little bit larger, 10 to 12% of the exam. Then we've got fixed income, 10 to 12% of the exam. And then we've got 3 topic areas here that are about 5 to 8% of the exam. Derivatives, alternative investments, portfolio management. And then here's the official largest one, 15 to 20%, is ethics, the standards of professional conduct. And so that's a big part of the exam there. So you need to keep this in mind as you put together your study plan and as you study, because that means there's more points available. So the most points are available in the accounting, the financial statement analysis, and ethics. And then after that we had fixed income. And if we go back here just for a second, we can see that equity is that same size. So quantitative methods, economics, corporate issuers, all about 10%. And then those 3 smaller ones, derivatives, alternative investments, and portfolio management. Also, just from looking at this, you get an idea of the breadth of the curriculum for level 1. You just look at economics, which isn't that big of a weight, but we've got microeconomics, we've got some macroeconomics, we've got international economics, exchange rates, and models of trade, and all of that. So there is a lot to learn. So one reason I wanted to go over this is just to give you an idea up front of the challenge that you face. But it's certainly doable. Now, in the past, the recent past, the pass rate on the level 1 exam has been 43%. It's bounced around in the low 40s. Now, this is not 43% of those who signed up to take the exam and sent their check off to the CFA Institute. This is 43% of the candidates who actually sat for the exam and took the exam. So this will include candidates who are taking it for the second or even the third time. Now, we believe 70% has always been a passing score, but the CFA Institute doesn't tell us what their passing score is that they set after each exam. And they haven't released any exams since 1997, so we don't have old exams for you to look at. Now, the exam format, it's in 2 sessions now. It's computer-based testing. You go to a computer-based testing location at the appointed date and time. And there's 2 sessions. Each session has 90 questions. And each session is 2 hours and 15 minutes. So the test is 4.5 hours long. They're all multiple choice questions, and each one has 3 answer choices at level 1. So in that first session, session 1, they'll test you on ethical and professional standards, economics, quantitative methods, financial statement analysis. And there's an optional break between the two sessions. You don't have to take a break, but you can take a break of a half hour or so. And then it's the second session. And then that'll cover corporate issuers, portfolio management, equity investments, fixed income, derivatives, and alternative investments. And as I mentioned, old exams aren't available. So how are you going to prepare and pass this exam? Well, the first part is to study the curriculum. Now we've got our Schweser notes, that's 5 volumes where you learn the required LOS. And we've broken the material down by learning outcome statement. So, learning outcome statement 3A, right? As we saw with probability concepts. And then you learn the material for that. You learn the definitions of the new terms. If there's calculations, formulas, it's all in there. So the notes really focus on the learning outcome statements, and you've got to learn the meaning of the terms in bold, just like you did in the university when you first opened your psychology book and they had words in bold, and you figure, well, I better learn those. Now we have video instruction that complements the Schweser notes. It really follows the Schweser notes and talks through the same examples, same concepts, same formulas, and all of that. But some people find those quite helpful. You might find them helpful in some areas, or not as useful in other areas where you just read it and understand it because you've got some previous experience. And as you go through them, we've got questions for you, like end of reading questions. We have it broken down into modules. So we've got quiz questions incorporated into the readings. So that's your first pass at learning the material. So while you're going through that, you can attend our on-demand classes. They're online, or we'll be offering some live classes, I believe. Maybe New York, London. You can check and see what's available in your city. Okay. And in those classes, we're clearly going over the same material, the same LOSs, but we tend to focus on the key points that candidates find challenging. Now, I answer questions from thousands of candidates. I do it every day. I've got a real good idea of what candidates struggle with, and what I never hear about, which I assume, is material that they don't find difficult. So the classes are going to include questions that require application of the knowledge and techniques. So whereas in the videos for the Schweser notes, we're going over the examples that we have in the books, now we're going to introduce some other questions, either our questions that we've developed or questions from the CFA curriculum books, and have you attempt those and try to start to apply this knowledge and apply it to things you haven't seen before. Now we've got our Schweser Pro Q Bank, and this question bank has thousands of questions, a lot of them with video explanations, and these are to help you learn and retain the material. And so you should take additional Q Bank quizzes. Now one thing you should understand about learning, and what we've learned from the learning science folks over the years, is that doing questions is really important. They've done studies and said, oh, you know, they have one group that reads the material, or both groups read the material, and then one group has to take quizzes and the other goes back and rereads the materials. Maybe using those highlighters, which it turns out don't do much for you, and just rereading it. And they found a very significant difference in performance, that those who did quiz questions, no matter how they did on them, but just that activity helps you remember and kind of store away this knowledge in a way that you can access and that you can use to solve problems. So take these quizzes as you go through. Now, your study is going to be over a period of months, right? You may spend 5 months on this first part of learning the curriculum. Well, you've still got to remember that quant stuff and that econ stuff when you get to ethics in study session 19. And so one way to do that is to periodically have another quiz, right? The quiz questions and the exam questions are about a minute and a half on average. So if you put together a 20-question quiz, that's a half-hour quiz. So while you're moving through the material, it's important to go back and say, you know, it's been a long time since I visited Quant. Maybe I ought to take a 20-question Quant quiz and go over that and make sure I still know that stuff and learn some of it that I haven't really retained yet. And it's kind of the same idea with the classes. If you study Quant and then you're studying Econ, and then you go back and say, okay, well, I think I'll take that Quant class now. Well, that makes you revisit the material, and you're studying it over time, but spread out a little bit. It turns out that that really helps your retention as well. And returning to it, I think, helps your understanding as well. The first time, maybe a little overwhelming. Second time, you know a lot of the stuff. And so the things that maybe you didn't catch the first time, you'll catch the next time. So that's our focus on the classes, is to move from studying the notes and kind of the straightforward end of chapter type questions into doing questions that are more exam-like and applying the material. Now we've got topic exams too. We want to give you feedback as you're studying so you know if your studying is effective. I mean, one of the worst things is you can study and study and say, okay, I've spent 300 hours on this. And then take a practice exam and score very poorly and go, oh, I spent 300 hours, but I just didn't learn what I needed to learn. Well, that's what these topic assessment exams. So we're moving now from the reading level or the study session level to the topic exam level or topic assessment exam. So now you're covering bigger chunks of material. And in our checkpoint exams, there's 3 of these spaced through your study period. And these checkpoint exams now cover multiple topic areas. Because remember, where we're trying to get you by exam day is over all of these topic areas. What, I think there were 10 of them. Okay? And so that's the exam day thing that you have to do. So we're moving you through the material and having quizzes over little material, then more material, then more material. So it's a progression. And as you remember from our schedule of exam topics, session 19, the last one, is the largest one. That's ethical and professional standards. Well, for that you need to study the Schweser notes, and we have videos for that as well. But you really need to read the Standards of Practice Handbook, which is in Reading 58 of the CFA Curriculum books. They're Volume 6. And Reading 60, which is applications of the standards, where they have just a lot of examples. You have to study all of that material. So that's the first part, right? That's the first part. Get through the curriculum, take your assessment exams, your quizzes, review, attend the classes, all of that to get what you would think is exam ready. And you should do that with at least a month to go before your exam. And we think of that last month as your review period, where we're really going to beat you into shape for the exam. Now, we've got our Schweser exam review workshop. We offer these live in some cities, but we have an online version of that as well. And now we're just focusing on questions with a little bit of review of the topic areas and the required LOSs mixed in with that, just to kind of get it to the front of your mind. So we've started out with the study, then study with new questions. Now we're really moving to focus on doing the questions and doing them fairly rapidly and correctly. So I think we've got something over 55 hours of questions and answers, okay, where we set some questions, you work them, then we come back and then we go through them and talk about, oh, these 2 answers look a lot alike. How can you differentiate between these? Or this looks like a really long calculation, but if you think about it, there's a better way to get there that's not going to take as much time. So how to address these questions and how to be good at answering questions, learning the skills you're going to need on exam day. Now, as part of your final review over this last month, we've got 6 full-length mock exams. So that's 180 questions per exam. These are as exam-like as we can make them, and they are with the topic weights, or within the bounds of the topic weights, that the actual exam is going to be. So you take a mock exam and then you review after that. You go back to the questions you missed and ask yourself that hard question, well, what did I need to know to get this right that I didn't know? And that can start to fill in some of the holes in your knowledge. And sometimes I think at the beginning of this review period, after you finish study session 19, the classes, the notes, everything, take a full practice exam and get some feedback at the beginning of this review period on where you are in each of the topic areas. With our online tools, you can see, oh, I did great in fixed income. I thought I knew corporate finance, corporate issuers, but I didn't do well there. And this will help target your review over those last weeks before the exam. Then we've got a book called Secret Sauce, and Secret Sauce is just portable. It's more distilled, right? So not a lot of the detail, but touching on all the topics and all the skills that you should have. And that's just, I say portable because I think how people use it to best advantage is to carry it around with them for a month. And whenever you have some time, you're on the subway, you're flying somewhere, you're meeting somebody for lunch and they're not there, pull it out for 10 minutes and look at it again. Keep reviewing and improve that retention. Maybe you run into something and go, gee, that doesn't make sense. I don't remember that at all. Well, then it's time to go back to the Schweser notes or the videos or the class and have another look at that. And as part of this final review, there are end-of-reading questions in the whole CFA books, the 6-volume curriculum books that they provide for the Level 1 exam. And it's pretty time-consuming to work all those problems, and some of them are long and detailed, a lot of calculations and things. But you should really read through those and say, well, how would I answer this? Can I answer this? And then maybe learn from their answer explanations from those. So that's going to be a busy month, that last month, or maybe it's 5 or 6 weeks, depending on when you get through that first pass at all the curriculum. Well, I know I've been talking here, so let's distill it down a little bit. For passing the exam with Schweser, initial study of the CFA curriculums starts with the Schweser notes. Do the quizzes and exams. Use the on-demand videos if they help you. If they aren't helping you, don't spend the time. If you find them very helpful, spend the time on those. Use the question bank. Take quizzes from the various topic areas. Go and revisit topic areas you studied 2 months ago. Take the on-demand classes or the live classes. That's kind of the finishing touches on your knowledge of the curriculum. Use the Q bank again and repeatedly. And read that Standards of Practice handbook and that applications reading 60. Over the final month, do the exam review workshop. Now that's broken down into topic areas. Okay? So do a little bit of it now, a little bit of it later. I know I've taught a lot of these live over the years, and you spend 8 hours a day in there, and I think the learning around the afternoon hours, around 6, 7, 8 hours into it, maybe it falls off. And I think that's the great thing about the on-demand, is you can set your Saturday aside and say, well, I'm going to do the exam review workshop for fixed income today, and just really have a good focus and make your study effective and efficient. And then the mock exam, review, take another mock exam, review, take another mock exam, review, ... you see, and make it through those 6 exams. Keep your secret sauce handy and review the material whenever you can. If you're starting to get the idea, to be successful, for most people, they really have to immerse themselves in this task, okay, especially over that last month. Well, a few tips for exam day, nothing earth-shattering here. Read the Standards of Practice handbook one more time the day before your exam. There's a lot of memory in that, and just remembering the examples and the applications. So it's short-term memory stuff. So that's why I've always suggested that people kind of load their brain up with their short-term brain, their short-term memory up with that the day before the exam. And I think it'll be the first thing you encounter on the exam in that first session. Come early, keep things calm, and be well rested, at least as much as you can. And read the questions carefully. You don't want to make exam mistakes. Well, I understood the material, I knew how to apply the material, but I didn't think that's what they were asking. Or I thought they were asking this. So go slowly when you read the questions and go rapidly when you're answering the questions, because you've got to understand very clearly what's being asked and what they're telling you. And if it's a long question, this paragraph long, jump to the end. Because if you read the whole thing and then you get to the end and they say, okay, what's the effect on the price of the bonds if interest rates change by 50 basis points? Well, if you just jump to that and read it, you're going to have to go back and pull all the information from the question stem anyway. So why read it, find out what you need to know, and then go back and have to go through it again? So you can jump to the end of those long questions and maybe save yourself a little time that way. Well, I hope this has been helpful. I hope you join us for the journey. We'll be with you every step of the way, answering your questions. Send them in anytime, 24/7. We'll answer your questions about the curriculum or our materials, or how'd you get this answer to this question, all of that. So we'll be here for you. It's a challenge, but you can succeed. It's going to take some effort and some time and some help, but you can do it. Well, thanks for your time and best luck on your CFA journey.